You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we will be talking about the action from day 2 of the first test between West Indies and England. It was a day that England started in a pretty good position and ended in a less good position, albeit maybe not a total catastrophe. I am Jack Hope and I am joined by a man who is incredibly dedicated to the Cricket Podcast. Dan Weston, where are you?
The only way I could appear on a cricket podcast night, which I'd agreed to a few days ago, was to stop at Ferry Bridge services on the M62. I'm currently driving down from Durham in the northeast of England to Kent in the southeast of England, just off the A1M. Ferry Bridge was the services which was closest when day's play ended, so I quickly dialed into here. Dedication to the cause, unlike Max, who's had to scoot off for an unknown reason.
Yeah, Max and Ross are down the pub, and the real heroes of the Cricket Podcast are here bringing you the goods. And before we get going, a quick reminder that we have a sponsor for this show, Serious Cricket, who we get all of our team merchandise from, have kindly partnered with us for the West Indies series, and I think the IPL as well. If you are gearing up for the cricket season, which you probably are if you're into your cricket, then we can do you a deal. Head over to seriouscricket.co.uk, use the code TCP22 for 10% off your cricket equipment. Get your bat, get your gloves, get your new shoes, your cable knit jumper. Our first match, Dan, 17th of April this year.
Oh, wow. You ready? Are you ready?
No, I need at least one more jumper, I think.
You need to get yourself an Oculus ahead of the new season. Have you seen that?
No, what's that?
I've got one of them. It's a virtual reality headset where you can play cricket with.
Right. So I can tune up in my kitchen.
Yeah, I got my first 50 in T20 the other day.
Did you?
Yeah,
Nice.
I almost did a Sunrisers Hyderabad.
What game?
Failed to chase 135, but yeah, it was. Yeah.
What game's this?
IB cricket. It's amazing.
All right, well, I'll definitely have a look into that. That sounds.
You can play tests, T20s, T10, whatever. It's
Nice.
quality.
Yeah.
So I know some of the players that play it quite a lot. Apparently, Tom Moores is top of the world leaderboard on it, from what I was told.
The actual cricketer is top of the.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I'll definitely have a look into that. That sounds interesting. And we're also on Patreon, patreon.com/the Cricket Pod, if you want extra shows, Q&As, access to our Discord, IPL data, like a bunch more stuff from just £4 a month. That is a really good way to support the show if you like what we do. Up to 35 patrons. It'd be really good to get through the 40 mark before the IPL and then bust through the half century during the IPL. That's our game plan.
See you boys smash the road to 10k as well.
Oh yeah, we've smashed the road to 10k.
Yeah.
If you're on YouTube. Also, if you're on YouTube, I'm down as Max Rowe Brown, and Dan, you are Ross Legg today, because I don't know how you change the names. So, anyway, let's talk about the cricket, because it was a pretty interesting day. England started off in the late 200s. Jonny Bairstow at the crease, not out overnight. He added a few more runs. Chris Wokes added a few more runs. And then it all sort of came to a rather abrupt end. Wokes fell to Jaden Seals, who picked up Overton a couple of balls later. Mark Wood didn't really hang around for particularly long. Jack Leach edged 1-4 between slip and the keeper, and ended not out before Bairstow not threw his wicket away, played some shots, and then skied one. England finished on 311. It's the first time they reached 300 since August last year at Headingley against India, which is...
It's really weird because England got over 300, yeah, it still kind of felt like an anti-climb.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, yeah. They got there. And then it was just like, oh, and it's over. West Indies came out to bat, and England. I don't know. Maybe the England bowlers were a bit demoralised by how the innings finished because they didn't really turn up. If we're being polite, the West Indies plundered runs. Craig Brathwaite, who, he's a man who looks like he hates batting when he bats. Everything looks painful. He looks like an arthritic crab. He scored 55 off 70 balls. He scored at run a ball for most of his innings. Eventually, they slowed him down a little. He fell. Campbell fell. It was like a competition of who can get out to the worst ball at the beginning of the West Indies inning, or in that middle period of the West Indies innings. And it looked like England had come back into the match. They had West Indies 127 for 4. And that's when Nkrumah Bonner and Jason Holder, who looked really good for his 43, came together and moved West Indies to a pretty decent looking 202 for 4. So they finished 109 runs behind with 6 wickets in hand. Now I'm looking at that and I'm thinking England have missed an opportunity there. There was some discussion in one of the cricket groups I'm in about whether West Indies were 5-1 to win the Test at the end of day one. And somebody was saying that's ridiculous. West Indies are never they should be 3-1 or something like that. And I thought 5-1 was been pretty generous. I thought they were in trouble at the end of day one. I think now though it's probably 50-50. This was definitely a West Indies day, and I think they played really well. Dan, any highlights from your point of view that you want to touch on first?
Well, again, we saw the extreme quality. We spoke yesterday on the pod, I don't know if you heard that, Jack, about I think gun to head. I take and I haven't really seen a great deal. The other not.
Oh no, I think we might have.
And Jared Kimber said that.
Hold on, Dan. Can you start your answer again? Because I finished my question and then it's just been like robot voice for about 30 seconds. And you said Jared Kimber, and now you're back in the game.
Yeah. So Costa Coffee at Very British Services obviously doesn't have great Wi-Fi. Other coffee shops are available, but just not in the services. So we're talking. I said about Jason Holder. I was talking about him yesterday on the pod and how. Guns ahead, I'd take him over Ben Stokes in Test cricket, and I haven't really seen a great deal that's changed my mind over the last day or two. With Jared Kimber, going back to what he was saying, I was listening to the radio on the way down here for an hour, and he said that he's on Top Sport, and he said that Chris Woakes bowled 10 balls which wouldn't have hit a leg stump going down leg side in his 12 overs so far, and. Maybe that's probably about the same amount that he'd actually bowl in a series down leg side. So it's not his finest day. Went almost 5 and over as well. Yeah,
I thought if you're going to look at turning points, so I think if we address things first. England wrap up on 311. You say it's a bit of an anticlimax. I'd probably give that innings as a whole though, from an England point of view, 7 out of 10. It's a bit above average. It's not too bad. It's got a decent knock from Bairstow in it. He played really well. You talked about that yesterday, and he looked like the real deal again.
1 out of 1 century since he joined Punjab.
Yeah, exactly. 311 looks like it's going to put the West Indies in some pretty serious difficulty. It's not 350 that they wanted. I think Ben Foakes said that at the end of the day, and you could tell he hadn't been around the team for a while. But it wasn't. It's not too bad, is it? But it was that bowling spell you talk about after, just before lunch, where West Indies plundered Overton and Woakes, and it. I don't think England bowled a good ball in that first 10 overs of the innings. They completely wasted the new ball. Everything was too full or too short or oscillating between the two. There was one over just after Brooks came in actually, so they'd taken the first wicket, and Brooks got off the mark with like the longest of long hops outside off stump, cut away behind point. And it was like next ball completely overcorrected, half volley outside off stump, smashed back down the ground, and it was like that 2-ball passage of cricket there really shows the drop off in England's resources once you get rid of their best 3 or 4 bowlers, I thought. You talk about Wokes, and he sprayed it around a little bit. He can do that sometimes. He's not a metronome in the same way that someone like Anderson or Broad can be. But he also had a real shocker. Normally with Wokes, you get the odd bad ball, but you get 2 or 3 stunners in there as well in a spell, and that's how he causes difficulties. But that just didn't seem to be there. CricViz had a stat. They had 2 things. They said, according to their expected wickets algorithm, this was the 3rd worst spell by an England opening pair in a decade, which is not ideal.
Quite something, yeah.
Yeah, and they also said it's about 2 years since they bowled so few deliveries in the good line and length area of the wicket. Only 35% of the deliveries that the seamers bowled were in those areas. Now, I think expected wickets is a little bit of a bogus stat. I think it's a little bit of a CricViz special, but the 35% on a good line of length, that's a little bit less subjective. They haven't invented an algorithm for that. That's just where the ball bounced. That's crap, Dan, isn't it? I mean, that's really poor for an international team.
Yeah. But then I think there's, I guess, some form of mitigating circumstances for this. So Overton has barely bowled in a competitive match since like September. So to asking him to come and play Test cricket, it's a tough ask. Wokes is... I mean, I actually think that Wokes could be a pretty decent opening bowler for England. Obviously, he hasn't really had that opportunity with Anderson and Broad being around on a regular basis, but I think he could do a pretty good job. But didn't really show it today. Again, probably hasn't played a lot of cricket, and this is the problem. These guys have not come in and played a lot lately, and just that's tough to come in to play West Indies. I mean, Overton didn't play in the Ashes. Wokes played a bit. It's difficult.
Yeah, and they didn't get. I mean, they bowled a fair amount of overs, didn't they, in the warm up match? But it was only one warm up match. It's
I don't have any store in those warm up matches.
Yeah,
at all. And you've got like 12 players play 12, and the fact that some teams, I think maybe England did to some degree with Lawrence over Pope, that some teams actually use those guys as a guide for selection decisions just absolutely blows my mind. I mean, if you don't know enough about a guy who's been around your group for 2 or 3 years, and you're judging him on the performance of one warm-up match where it's 12 aside, I mean, your selection system's broken.
The other thing that people were talking about today was Joe Root's captaincy once again. There were, I don't know to what extent the poor bowling can be nailed to the captain's mask.
No.
Master.
He hasn't guided down leg side.
Yeah, no. I did think he got some things wrong though. He bowled at a point in the game where England were basically just trying to dry up the runs. Leach bowled 7 maidens in a row, took him off. Mm-hmm. I didn't really understand that.
But he also got him on against the only left-hander in the top 7. Which was weird.
This was strange.
Then Root bowled himself against 2 righties.
Didn't get that at all. After that little rain break.
It's difficult to say that he's a captain of great tactical acumen, I think.
I'd 100% agree with that. And I think the other thing that was quite confusing, and I think this is worrying from an England point of view longer term as well, is that the bowlers bowled with so... Normally one of the things that you see with Anderson and Broad is exactly what they are trying to do. Now, there might be some circumstances where the pitch doesn't help them, or the conditions don't suit them, or they're in Australia and the batters are too good for them, or whatever it is. That does happen, and we have seen that. And they're not flawless god bowlers in all conditions. They're amazing at home, and they're average, slightly above average away from home. But you can normally see how they think they're going to get the batter out. Like they have plans. They're able to execute those plans. That didn't look like something that England knew all day. I thought it was sort of a miracle, in fact, that they picked up the 4 wickets they did. I mean, and if you look back at the shots and the dismissals, it was an odd day. Yeah, go for it.
Do you think that Joe Root is basically captain by default because he's one of the only players who is undroppable?
I think that's the I mean, I think that's 100% the situation. I think Root is the only undroppable player in that team, and the only player who you could probably burden with that as well. I don't think they can give it to Stokes because he bats.
I guess he's the other undroppable guy, though. Yeah.
I mean, I say that I don't think they could. They could, in theory, give it to Stokes, but I think it would be a lot on Stokes' shoulders.
Yeah, no, don't know that. Yeah.
Bairstow, I think, would be the most intense man in history to be captain. Also, from a Panjab Kings point of view, you don't want him concentrating on the test team, do you?
I'm saying nothing.
And then I don't, none of the bowlers. There's a rotating cast there. They can't give it to Robinson after what happened in the summer, and he's unfit half the time. Broad, they could have given it to Broad as a holdover, but they've dropped him from the team, and it would also be strange, I think, if they did that. So I think they're quite low on options that they could give it to. Yeah. They could maybe give it to Wokes or something like that, but then
he's doesn't play every game.
Yeah, and if he doesn't take wickets on this tour, then I think his career as an overseas player is over in general. I just don't think he'll go away again. I think they might play him at home, but I think. So Root is definitely captain by default, but that doesn't. I don't think that excuses some of the decision making around who he bowls, when he bowls.
This stuff's not difficult.
Yeah, it's not. We're I'm an armchair critic. Your skill is not in captaincy. Your skill is in recruitment. But we are able to look at this and say there are some tactical flaws in what he's doing here, and he's doing this day in, day out. And he has access to a dressing room that should be able to say, "Hey, mate, is this a good idea?"
And even for the teams I work for, obviously you say my specialist skill is recruitment, but I also do a lot of opposition planning and stuff. And one of those key elements of that is a matchup chart where I colour code bowler versus batter matchups: green, amber, red. And Root seems to quite like bowling red matchups, which is obviously avoid. Weird.
Well, you always say, don't you, that there's the captaincy, 80-90% of captains fall into one category, which is mediocre, not really affecting much of the outcome, or not affecting the outcome of the match to a great extent.
Even in that bracket?
Well, this is what I was going with. It's 5% are MS Dhoni and 5%. And I'm sort of starting to wonder. I think there's more than one game where England have let slip a good position in the last 12 months. And at least part of that is because the wrong people were bowling, or the fielders were standing in the wrong place, or the plan they were trying to execute was wrong. And we go back to the point I was making about planning earlier. I don't think at any point the England bowlers were doing a thing to target a batter's weakness. The plan was bowl Stokes now. It wasn't bowl Stokes and he'll try and get Nkrumah Bonner out that way. It was Stokes' go. Plan, when Mark Wood was bowling, he was bowling he bowled that really nice spell where he was getting the ball to reverse, and that was good. But it felt quite unplanned. They didn't really know how to exploit that. They were like, "Oh, flip! This ball's reversing." At the other end, Ben Stokes was saying to the umpire, "Can we change the ball?" But Wood was bowling 90 mile an hour in swinging Yorkers, and at the other end, the vice captain's saying to the umpire, "We can't use this ball. Can we swap it?" Like it's nonsense thinking. And so that's today. There were a few times in the Ashes when it happened. I think back last summer, the famous time was Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Shami teeing off at Lords against the bouncer plan. But then
there was the overall kind of bigger picture as well. Was it against New Zealand when they just decided they weren't going to chase it, a very chaseable score?
But there was that. But I'm thinking in one of those games as well, they had a spell before the new ball was bowled in one of those matches where Root bowled 4 or 5 overs, and I think it was like some other part timer. It obviously wasn't Joe Denley. He wasn't in the team, but it was 5 or 6 overs of complete surrender, basically.
Milan?
Maybe Milan. No, Milan wouldn't have been the team either. It was just before the new ball, and I think New Zealand went from a dicey position to adding like 40 runs in those 6 overs, and not being in a bad position when the new ball came. And I don't know. I do think we have to start really questioning what's going on there, and whether.
I think there's a pretty fine line between getting the balance of accountability but avoiding micromanagement. But I do think that questions need to be asked of his decision making.
Yeah.
I mean, if something like Andrew Strauss should be, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Because you can't provide a coherent, evidence-based answer for that. That's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, I even little things like those 2 overs he bowled himself, and Holder, put him in the stands. Holder had been playing well, but it had been a defensive innings, and he saw an opportunity, and he was like, "Yes, please, I'll add 6 runs." And we're talking about one boundary here, but these things do add up. If you every innings as a captain, you make a mistake that costs your team 10 runs. Makes that's that will lose you matches. That will
turn defeats draws into defeats, or wins into draws, or whatever. 100%. And that's more than a marginal loss, if you like.
Yeah, Dan. There are some other questions that have come in, and we'll go to questions now because I want to see you on your way to Kent before it gets too dark.
Long drive ahead.
There's a few people that have been. I don't know if it's unique to our timeline or whether you get this too. And there's a narrative that's developed that I think this comes off the back of something that David Gower said at the Ashes, that the IPL has hurt this England side. It's something that we've given pretty short shrift to on this podcast in the past. A lot of the players aren't the same. It doesn't really see. I can't see the causal link there. Doesn't seem to have hurt India or Australia or South Africa with players.
It's really caused Crawley some problems, hasn't it?
Well, yeah. Is there any credibility whatsoever though to some of the ideas that perhaps franchise cricket or short form cricket might have damaged this England team or left them in a situation like they're in?
With the greatest of respect to your probably your most esteemed guest of all time on the cricket podcast, I think it's rubbish. I mean, I facetiously tweeted yesterday about the IPL causing England real problems when the only guy who's going to go to the IPL got 140. The rest of the top 8 or whatever got basically that as well between them, and none of them are going to the IPL. So I don't know that's a small sample size, and I was being a bit facetious, but a lot of people kind of latched onto that. I think I got over 2,000 likes at the last time I checked on Twitter from that one tweet. But yeah, for me, we play too much red ball cricket, and it's not causing India or New Zealand, for example, any problems. You don't see a lot of the Australian players play week in, week out in Sheffield Shield. So I don't see it as a coherent argument. What I do see it is that you've got these purists, and that includes people in the media. I make no two ways about that, who just want to see more red ball cricket. They want to see it more taken more seriously. They don't like the 100 and all this stuff. And because of that, they're using this as narrative. And it's a flawed narrative. It's a false narrative. There's absolutely no evidence to suggest that they're right at all. It makes no... You look at it, right? You think, what are you going to learn more from batting? Even for England, right? You're going to go to like 4-day match in April in front of about 100 people, some outground somewhere or whatever, or you're going to learn more playing in front of 50,000 people at Mumbai in the IPL.
Well, the ground at Beckenham is quite nice, Dan. If you've ever been down there, you're right. I mean, it's
yeah. And having kind of spoken to some players in the 100, obviously in the summer, a lot of them did comment on the fact that the crowds that we had in the 100 were of a different level to what they were experiencing in county cricket, and that they felt that was almost like a challenge to perform in front of those kind of crowds. It's something that they hadn't experienced a lot of, and being able to do that in franchise cricket will prepare you for the big stage in front of 50,000 plus in World Cups or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I don't necessarily see that it is completely one or the other as well, particularly when you're talking about top order batters. I think there are complementary skills that work across both formats. Now, you're not gonna look. I'm not saying here that you're going to turn Jonny Bairstow into Jeff Boycott. That's off the table. The era of Jeff Boycotts is probably over, and for better or worse, there's not much we can do about that, because the dynamic of cricket, it didn't shift, by the way, because of the IPL. It started shifting when they played the first one-day international and started to condense cricket down. This is a decades in the making trend. But the thing that Jonny Bairstow gets out of that is adaptability and a range of shots that Jeff Boycott frankly doesn't have. And if you want to look at some other things as well, people say that white ball cricket's affecting players' performance in red ball cricket. They can't bat for long anymore. What I think is actually affecting performance in red ball cricket is better planning from bowlers. Like you didn't see in the 90s. Well, one, if we want to talk about cricket back in the day, until the 1990s, really, there weren't that many good test teams. A lot of those teams were pretty poor. Even India included in this. India were not a powerhouse of global cricket in the 80s. You'd have one, maybe two bowlers that could play away from home, and a lot of the rest of the time, there'd be some fee stuff. England were a shambles. For a lot of the 80s and 90s, and there were some quite bad teams on the circuit. Now I think the standard cricket across the board is higher, and all of the bowlers playing know what your weakness is, know where to bowl to you, and have better resources and better coaching to be able to execute those plans. That's something that just didn't exist before. That I think is really why batting is on the decline. It hasn't got anything to do with with T20 cricket.
And if you look at England as an isolated case as well, which obviously a lot of people are doing, blaming the IPL, in my opinion, unfairly, is that for me it feels like a team who is very unwilling to embrace marginal gains.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. They say they make a lot of noise, the people around England cricket, about there not being a magic number in cricket, and we're not looking for a magic number. But in the same way that on base percentage was in the book Moneyball, which is the direct comparison here. But I think they probably are looking for a magic number. They're just trying to be secret about it, and I think that
I'm not so sure.
You don't think that they are?
It's all about conversations with people, and still, I very much get the feeling that they use data when it suits them and hunches when it suits them.
Well, I mean, it might be a combination of both of those things, to be fair. I know, and that I mean, neither of them are ideal approaches. And if you apply two things, then double fucked, aren't you? We had a couple of questions. we had a couple of questions on our Discord from Patreons, and we'll wrap up the show. One was from VJ, which was about Joe Root's bowling changes. That would be a really interesting thing to do, I think, is to look through Joe Root's bowling changes and
maybe that could be your next project after you did the MS Dhoni captaincy.
I did do the MS Dhoni thing, yeah. That was. But the problem is, I did that by comparing players who played under Dhoni and not under Dhoni. And there's a decent sample size of those in the IPL. There are no England test bowlers who have played for another test nation, which is a challenge.
Yeah.
Apart from Boyd
Have they played
Rankin.
for another captain?
Yeah. So
regular. Yeah.
so it's a little bit tricky. I think it might be worth. It'd be interesting to have a look at, though. I'm sure, when you talk about red matchups, it would be interesting to see how many times Joe Root chooses when he has when he has another option available, when he makes a choice that appears to be negative expected value, versus a regular captain. The other question was, can you guys give an idea about who the upcoming bowlers in the English camp might be? This is from the square root of 3. Like beyond Broad and Anderson and Archer, I'm flummoxed by the lack of options. Well, Robinson is definitely an option.
100%. Yeah.
He might have fitness issues here and there, but if he played 2 out of 3 tests, you're getting a pretty good player playing 2 out of 3 tests there.
He's very good. He's very, very good.
I don't think there's any problems with that. Beyond that,
I quite like Sam Cooke.
Okay.
Consistently taken a lot of wickets, but I think he's probably as card marked as a guy who doesn't bowl express pace.
Okay. He's the Essex bowler they call the Little Chef, isn't he?
Yes, indeed.
Because of Alistair Cook at the same club. Jamie Porter was flavour of the month for a while, but
Porter's decent. Yeah,
dropped off the radar a little bit. Saqib Mahmood he'll definitely get a go. I'd have thought at some point.
He will, but he hasn't really ever done it in county cricket. So it's one of those. We'll pick a guy on a hunch because it suits us, kind of thing.
Fisher is in the squad. Jack Norwell, people say.
Hunch. Fisher, complete hunch.
Yeah. Apparently he bowled quite quick when he was a teenager.
Yeah, that's why.
Which is.
Don't even go
this. I'm not making it up. If people at home probably don't think that's true, but that is why. That is at least part of the reason.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
You actually can't make it up, can you? Really?
I think England really need to hope that Archer sorts himself out, or not sorts himself out, but is sorted out. That makes it sound like it's Archer's going to do surgery on his own arm or something like that. Don't do that, and stay away from fish tanks, Jofra. And we'll hope for the best on that front, because he would solve one of the holes. Could be a challenge.
If England had a keeper who batted in the top 6, like a kind of pant kind of player, a genuine top 6 batter as a keeper.
They had the world's best wicketkeeper. Yeah,
you could even throw in someone like Ryan Higgins into the mix, because the guy will come back to. He'd be like a 7 or an 8 who is very capable all rounder. But apart from those guys, there's not really that many outstanding candidates on it.
So that's trouble. The final thing I wanted to ask you, and then I will let you drive on into the night, Dan. We saw Jack Leach back in the team together, which was, I don't know if it was a little bit of a surprise after what happened in Australia, but there was a sense that maybe Jack Leach's time as England spinner has come to an end. I heard yesterday on the podcast, you and the boys were speculating he might take 7 or 8 for the match. I wasn't too impressed with him from a wicket-taking point of view, so I wouldn't have to retread old ground there. But would you maybe, if you were king of England cricket, have thrown Parkinson in for this series?
I like Matt Parkinson. I just personally, again, it goes back a little bit to the day before the match. Why would you announce your 12 the day before a match? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And I mean, could Parkinson have been a viable option? I don't know. I mean, it seems apparent to me, at least, that there's a kind of a pecking order, if you like, or a cab off the rank kind of scenario. I'm quite happy with Leach, to be honest with you, in terms of I think he'll do fine against West Indies away, batting first against the opposition with sort of 6 right-handers in the top 7. I'm absolutely fine with that. I think let's wait and see with him. Let's judge him after the second innings.
Right, Dan, we're going to wrap up there. I've just been told in the chat that we have 2 live streams going at the same time on YouTube with the same content. We let Ross be in control for one day, and
Ross, you had one job.
The whole technology back office that we had is blown. Like, none of it works anymore. It's a complete fucking shambles. So sorry about this if you might have been.
The 2 for the price of 1.
I've no idea what we've done here. Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure as normal.
Yeah, same, mate.
Thanks for coming on the show. We'll catch up with you through the rest of the series, no doubt. We will be back tomorrow, which is Thursday, with more cricket stuff. It'll be good. See you later, everyone. What